What's going on, guys? This is Foresight Capital, and today I wanted to give a quick update on the Palantir trade. So today we closed at $25.97 per share, which was down about 4.5%. And then in aftermarket hours, we picked up just a few pennies to 26.08, which is where we closed out the week. So we ultimately had a pretty big decline in price, but we found support yet again right around the $26 per share level. And it's looking like that's almost another median line of support right around $26. We've been using that for the past week and a half or so, and it's been some major support for at least most of this week after we saw a big decline in price from breaking the longer term support line on Monday afternoon heading into Tuesday morning. But the big news of the day is that we gave up most of the phantom run-up that we had yesterday, and I call it a phantom run-up because Palantir was up about 5.5% to 6% yesterday, really on no news. Now, there was a major news announcement after market hours that Palantir is going to be hosting a live demo of their three primary products, and we'll talk about that more in just a moment. But it's interesting because the earliest news article that I could find was actually after the market closed and after Palantir had already traded up about 5% on the day. And after that announcement, we didn't really see much price action except at about 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We saw the new high of day at about $27.45 per share. And I made a video at this point stating that I thought we were ultimately going to see a pullback to the $24.60 per share yellow support level before we ultimately tested this $27.70 per share level. And a lot of you came in and said, no way, we're almost there, we're going to test it. And it's been a very firm resistance line for quite some time now. And I had mentioned that I thought we really didn't have the buying volume to come in and push us above that point. And today we did see the market sell off first thing in the morning, really at about 4 a.m. Eastern time. So again, in pre-market hours, we saw a big drop off in price and then pretty much consolidated the rest of the day, where we're now trading below the 9 period, 50 period, and 200 period moving average, all of which is a pretty bearish setup and leads me to believe that we're at least going to see at least a bit more of a continuation of this downswing. Now, there's a couple different time frames you could look at this on. You could look at it all the way back to the end of November, where we set this 33.50 high, and we can see here that the next run up was a bit lower to about the $30 per share range before a sell-off and another peak right around the $27.80 per share range or $28 per share range, another sell-off, and then the next little peak was yet again lower. So we're continuously setting lower highs, which tends to be a bearish symbol. But I think there's enough buyers coming into Palantir to prop it up so that we're not going to see a huge sell-off, but we do have to at least consider the possibility for a consolidation period back down to this $24.60 per share level before bulls come back in and take it over and hopefully push us back up to test this longer-term resistance of $27.70 per share. And then at that point, we can ideally break through and start worrying about the bottom side of this long-term trend that we broke through on Tuesday, where we had the pretty major sell-off from about $27.67 all the way down to really a low of the week of about $25.11. So the announcement yesterday was that Palantir is going to have their very first live demo day, and the timing is interesting, as some of the viewers pointed out. It's January 26th. The lockup period is due to extend until 3 days after the Q4 earnings for 2020, which should be sometime near the end of January or the beginning of February 2021. So it just so happens that we have an event coming out that's going to showcase Foundry, Gotham, and Apollo platforms, and we're not sure exactly if it's a live stream event yet or an in-person event. And I'd also be curious to hear how they're going to set it up, whether it's going to be showing some completed products, because we know that Palantir tailors their products to specific companies and specific industries or to specific government style contracts in order to perform functions that are needed by those specific firms. And so I would be curious to see, are we going to see a finalized product that they can showcase how they actually tailored it to the firm that needed this specific product? Or are they going to show the baseline and then talk about how they can tailor it to meet a specific company's needs? Because that could lend to what sort of attention they're going to get from these companies. If they can show how well they're able to tailor and integrate their technology to meet the company's needs, I think it's going to be a lot more efficient than here's what we can do and how we can tailor it and give us a call and we'll show you. So it'll be interesting to see how they ultimately pitch their products and how much hype they create around it. But the timing is interesting because, as I mentioned, it should be occurring right before the Q4 2020 earnings report, which doesn't exactly have a date yet confirmed that I've been able to find, but should be around this time, meaning that we could potentially see a run-up into that lockup period. Now remember, the lockup period is where about 80% of the overall shares that are tradable within the company will be able to be sold but not be required to be sold by the company's founding members, some early employees, and pretty much most of the employees that are in the upper levels of management, as well as potentially even some lower level employees. So all of them had the potential to then start selling their shares to the open market at that time. And there's a concern that there's going to be a big sell-off, but I think it's ultimately going to be determined by where the price ends up by that time. If Palantir keeps fading all the way through the beginning and end of January, when the lockup period should be announced as a finalized date, then we may not see as much selling pressure as if we've just recently broken out the all-time highs. So it seems that Palantir, by doing the event on this particular day, is potentially trying to pump the price up into that actual lockup period so that the price will be inflated then, and people will be able to sell their shares at a higher valuation if they're looking to sell them, or have to sell fewer shares basically to get the same level of capital that they're hoping to take out of their overall stock holdings in the company. So if we see that run-up happen, then the sell-off is probably going to be a bit bigger because there's going to be more potential to make money and people will be more likely to sell their shares off. However, if the shares are compressed, if we continue to see this downtrend and we break through 24.60 and trade down to, for instance, $18 per share, there's going to be a lot less demand most likely to go ahead and sell the shares because people will know that the company has the potential to reach the highs of $33 per share or $27, and they probably won't want to sell as much for $18 per share as they would if it was trading at $50 by the time we got to this lockup day. So I think that them building this event potentially or predictably to build up hype around the date that the lockup is going to expire will be an interesting dynamic. We'll have to learn more about what they're going to release on that day and showcase on that day, and also keep an eye on where the stock price is moving around that day just to kind of see where we feel that the price could end up. Is it going to take a big is it going to have a big decrease that day as people go to take as much profit as they can, or is the price compressed and people are going to be holding on to their shares hoping for them to reach new highs? And another interesting fact today is that investors.com actually wrote an article about a Credit Suisse analyst upgrading their price target to 17 from 13. So it seems that analysts, while they still think the company is extremely overvalued, which, by the way, I can agree with, at least according to their revenue and their overall profits, it seems like the analysts are at least willing to up their price targets, though that's still about a 40% discount from where the price is currently trading. But analysts are catching up, and we know that analysts have consistently been updating their price targets well below the actual price of Palantir, and that's because Palantir is a bit disconnected from the market, as a lot of stocks are right now. There's extremely high valuations in the market in almost every industry, and you could argue that Palantir is extremely overvalued. Depending on the day, they're a $50 billion company and really only have a couple $100 million worth of revenue, or $1 billion in projected revenue next year. So they're definitely trading at very high multiples for earnings, for revenues, and realistically, this market is a bit disconnected from reality, and that's going to have to come back to reality at some point. we don't know when that's going to be then. And so I'm personally holding about 500 shares long term, and then I'm trading another 400 or 500 shares actively so that I don't get caught holding the bag for the potential when investors come back in and start wanting to trade at reasonable multiples and actually own stocks at reasonable valuations. But that's not the case right now. So always do your own research on companies and know what you feel comfortable risking in a particular trade, especially if you're holding it long term and you start to see the price decline. Just remember, are you willing to hold it for the long term? If you believe in the company and you believe that it can grow into its valuation, great. But if you're not willing to lose that money, yeah, Palantir is definitely on the overvalued side, I would say, and that's why I'm trading a majority of my shares and not actively buying, and that's why I'm so interested in the price levels, just to get good entry points to potentially buy more and then know where to potentially sell. So I hope this video brought you some value on why I think that we ultimately didn't test the 2770 level, and that instead we will probably fade back to the 2460 before giving it a good run. I think that's going to happen, and I think that the hype created around this event towards the end of January is going to get us there, but it's going to take just a little bit of time. So again, thanks for watching until the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.